Okay, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world today. It is great to have you here. Thank you very much for joining us on today's webcast. We're going to be looking at the case for best-of-breed procurement technology and the CPO perspective. Very excited to have a wonderful panel of CPOs here to join us and our very own PL analyst to bring you what we think is a very important discussion. If you're looking at some of the challenges ahead for your organization, you'll have big questions around how digital can support you and how you can make the decisions about what solutions are right for you, what's the right mix, how can you be confident in deciding between best of breed, one-stop shop solutions to kind of to really get to what you need within your tech stack and to make sure that you're avoiding some of the issues that typically crop up in digital transformations here. So we're delighted to be partnering with Scan Market to bring you today's webinar. Obviously, this is a topic very close to their heart, but importantly, we want to make sure that this is an interaction with you guys. So we're going to be talking you through a little bit around some of the journeys our CPO panelists have been on. We're going to be providing a little bit of context in terms of what do we see when procurement leaders talk to the market, bringing one of our analysts to talk you through that. And we'll also be asking for your questions. I'm going to say this again. You'll have to bear with me, but we'd love to hear questions from you. If you are listening today, please do get your questions in to the, you can see that chat box there. I'll remind you again in the future, but you can see that chat box there. Do take the opportunity to get your questions across to our panel, and we will pick those up towards the second half once I've had my chance to kind of to pick their brains, as it were. I mentioned we've got a great panel here today, so delighted to be joined by Frank Mckay, Senior Vice President, Chief Procurement Officer with Jabil. They're a global manufacturing solutions company with revenue over $22 billion, and frankly, it's a global team. One of the things they focus on is the development and implementation of intelligent digital supply chain strategies focused on delivering an optimized end-to-end supply chain. And Frank has got more than 20 years of procurement experience in the manufacturing industry, as well as that particular focus on the digital side as well. So delighted to hear what Frank's got to say. We'll be bringing him in and getting a bit more of a depth on what those guys do in a moment. Also, really pleased to be joined by Clément Duquerroy, Vice President with Accor Hotels, and he's in charge of innovation and transformation for the global procurement organization. In Clément's past, we have, he's worked for Capgemini Invent, he's worked for Hilton Corporate, but now at Accor, he's responsible for driving strategic projects at a global level to digitalize e-procurement, business intelligence, e-commerce tools for their clients, and to create partnerships with best-in-class innovating stakeholders and optimize corporate procurement processes and policies. So again, entrenched within that digital side and how he can bring value to his organization through doing so. So we're going to hear a little bit around the journeys that they've been on. I'm also, thrilled to be joined by one of our very own analysts, our principal analyst indeed, Alex Johnson, with Procurement Leaders. Now, anybody who knows Procurement Leaders, they know that, Alex kind of wrote the book for us in terms of leading a lot of the research on digital transformation. We've got a few exciting pieces coming out this year as well. So what I've asked Alex to do is to provide a little bit of insight into what we hear when we talk to our network. What are they telling us there and how they select solutions before we go into those CPO journeys. So again, great panel, and please do, as I say, I'll flash this up on the screen. Additional resources will be made available post-event. We always get asked this. As far as we can share slides, we will share those with you guys post-event. And just a reminder again to submit questions throughout. Don't wait for me to nudge you over and over again. Do submit those questions, and we'll hopefully get a chance to get to those in the latter stage of today's webinar. But okay, that's enough from me. Delighted to bring in the panel to hear a little bit from them. Alex, maybe you can join us first and you can set that scene a little.
Yep, thanks very much, Steve. So I'm just going to briefly provide a whistle-stop tour, I suppose, a little bit of context around our research in this space. So really, I'm representing some of our member perspectives. If you've attended any of our virtual roundtables or events before, this is kind of a reflection on what we tend to hear from our membership base. So on this slide here, you can see there's a breakdown of three predominant deployment models: a single suite solution, which I think mainly in the course of this presentation is being referred to as one-stop shop. You might have heard a range of terminology used. Best-of-breed models and teams free to choose, where effectively there isn't a sort of dominant deployment strategy in mind. The two things I'd take away from this slide. So the first, if we look at that teams free to choose model, it looks like procurement functions and digital project teams overwhelmingly do want to have a sort of deployment model at the sort of forefront of their mind when they explore digital change. We moved from 28% having a teams free to choose approach to a 9%. And the other thing which is very clear from this representation is at the moment, the community is very focused on or largely focused on a sort of single suite approach. It does seem to be the dominant model. But, and you'll hear it during the course of this webinar, actually, it does look like the tides are changing somewhat. There is a shift in aspirations towards best of breed. You can see from 2014 to 2018, we've run the survey a number of times. The proportion who were targeting a single suite approach declined by 5%, and the proportion aspiring towards best of breed increased by 4%. But what's interesting is actually when you pull back the curtain on that data, it overwhelmingly seems to be larger, more mature organisations who've already undergone significant digital change are leading this sort of shift or transition, whether that be shaped perhaps by their experience in the space, or potentially they're looking for capabilities beyond that offered by traditional suite providers. And actually that's reflected in the sort of conversations we do hear from our membership base. And again, you may have heard similar considerations yourselves. If we look at the perceived advantages of each model between that best of breed and single suite approach, on best of breed, we have the aspiration towards more focused, targeted solutions. So perspective that the sort of specialism may lead to sort of deeper functionalities. That more focused roadmap may lead to access to innovations faster, perhaps being on the sort of cutting edge of capabilities. Ease of implementation update. So obviously if you're targeting a sort of business need or a business requirement, it's far easier to resolve that with one focused capability than deploying an entire suite. But also greater flexibility. So reflection, actually, you're not locked into one provider's vision. You've got access to a wide array of potential roadmaps. Single suite, to look at some of the perspectives there. Ease of overall integration. So the main case that's often made for single suite is this idea that you have a more integrated ecosystem. Actually, if you look towards the fact that lots of these suite providers have gone through quite significant merger and acquisition activity, often the modules don't actually integrate particularly closely, but nevertheless, that is an association. A single relationship as well. It's a perspective that rather than dealing with just one major provider, if you deal with an array of different solution providers, particularly smaller, more focused ones, that may lead to an increased risk profile. So that is one case that is made for single suite. Another is this perspective around a common user experience, or a common look and feel across a workflow. Perhaps more interestingly, though, the debate is being shifted slightly by this focus on cloud and that shift to software as a service. So there's been a significant impact on how partnerships are perceived by the fact that rather than procurement being able to go away, build bespoke, highly customized digital solutions, instead the shift to cloud has led to them needing to have longer, more strategic partnerships with providers, makes them more reliant on their roadmap, more reliant on their solution. And that has led to, I suppose, two schools of thought. One, making the case for single suite, saying what we need instead is more embedded, long-term, deeper partnerships with a smaller number of providers. The other, and again, this is largely being led by perhaps our more forward-looking and I'd say more mature digitally members. Individuals focus more on actually, if we have that reliance on providers, should we not be more embedded in terms of being able to shape their roadmaps? We not need to find partners that more closely align to our business requirements. And instead, that's leading them to look at that more flexibility provided by best of breed, particularly smaller providers where they might have more of an influence on how that roadmap evolves. And I think those sort of two considerations and those two visions might increasingly be reflected on this overall discussion. So that's a sort of whistle-stop tour, I suppose, and what we're hearing about the space, Steve.
Thanks, Alex. That really does set the scene. So let's dive into, what are some of the real challenges in front of organisations? What are some of the decisions that they're making? How are they making them? Frank, welcome to the webinar. It is lovely to have you here. Maybe you could start us off by briefly introducing your organisation to us and give us a little bit of an idea of your role within the business.
Sure. Thanks for having us along today. So, yeah, I think you framed it well with Jabil. Let me just give a little bit of context. I think I can answer that question on the next slide. But yeah, we're a manufacturing solutions provider. North of 25 billion in revenue. Our employees, we've got about 230,000 employees based around the globe. And the key kind of facts here, I think, are we've got 45 million square feet of manufacturing. We serve about just over 400 customers, and they play in many spaces, from automotive to industrial to energy to packaging to healthcare to defence and aerospace and many other end markets that we serve. So we're fortunate enough to have a world view of the marketplace. The complexity we're dealing with is that we have north of about 27 thousands of suppliers that we deal with on an annual basis, and we have a spend of about $22 billion annually that is spread between those supplier partners. So from an organizational architecture standpoint, the way of the organization coming together, we split it up in a couple of different ways when we're addressing our supplier partners. So our direct spend, so everything that goes on our customers' products, we have a team of folks who are deeply knowledgeable, who are out there every day looking for ways to drive us to a position of cost leadership. We have our indirect procurement organization that is managing the goods and services to support the business, as everybody in the audience, I'm sure, is very familiar with. And again, very similar, looking for ways to provide a position of cost leadership for the company. When I think about the next section, commercial enterprises for Jabil buried within the global procurement organization, think about that as innovative models that we have, and it couples nicely with the IPO office that we have we have based in two nodes, one in Asia and one in Eastern Europe, and that gives us access to not only labor arbitrage, but ways to drive out waste and inefficiencies for every dollar that we spend on behalf of the company. Let me just make sure I'm following this here. Then from a trade compliance and logistics aspect, we have a team of folks who are actually front and center in the business right now, and I think anybody in this call who's involved in not only the procurement and supply chain would have a good recognition that the trade tensions, Brexit, a US election coming up, these folks have been extremely busy. Throw on top of that the pandemic that we're dealing with, and you've got most of the carriers, the commercial carriers, not flying anywhere near the same levels as we are. So capacity has been unprecedented, constrained levels. So that team have been extremely busy of late, as you could appreciate. And then certainly, last but not least, is a team of individuals that I have working directly for me who wake up every day and worry and think about technology and the investments and the innovation that we can tap into and leverage and position the company for success. And I would say that team is really focused on not only solutioning for today, but also thinking about the next 5 years and staying close to the innovative partners that are out there pushing boundaries as we think about the journey that most folks are on when we think about digitization.
So Frank, with that in mind, I wanted to ask, can you give us a little bit more to help us understand your vendor supplier ecosystem when it comes to the technology systems that your function uses?
Yeah, sure. Let me use this slide. I think that hopefully provides a little bit of color. I'll start from the right side and move to the left, and hopefully everybody can see this. I know it's a very busy slide, but if you just think of what I talked about, around 45 million square feet of manufacturing, what I should have mentioned as well, that's we're in more than, I think, on 27 countries around the globe. We've got more than 100 facilities, and we're very fortunate that we made some early decisions about 20 years ago to partner on a global scale and get as close to a single instance as we possibly can when we think about ERP and our data collection and the drive towards automation and connecting all our manufacturing systems. So when I think of the investments there and what we're solutioning for in our maniacal drive towards automation, I think of it that as the area where we've invested in a one-stop shop. But as you start to slide across to the left, that strategy needs to pivot and change a little bit. And from an advanced planning standpoint, we've certainly made some investments there that I think is maybe somewhat in the middle of the difference between best of breed and the one-stop shop that we're talking about here today. But certainly, I think that becomes more relevant as you get further towards the left of the chart. When we're building out our technology strategy, when we're thinking about quoting, and that's what we do every day. We quote every single day, and as long as we have the right to quote, we've got to make sure that we're servicing customers in the way they expect and the demands that they have, which is they're looking for quotes in turnaround times that are now in some cases days. So it's not weeks and quarters or months anymore. And these are really complex pieces of business that we're involved in. So we've invested in some tool sets that I would argue are more in the best of breed than the one-stop shop. And I think that argument just becomes stronger for best of breed when you think about logistics and transport management systems and striving for that end-to-end visibility so we can understand where are the parts to support the manufacturing, that we have a level of confidence that we can build the right products at the right time and, of course, with the right quality. And the investments we've made there, I think, I would argue, are more in the best of breed than they are one-stop shop. And then the final piece on this slide is the procurement space, and I'll let everybody just read through it, but what I would categorize this as, we've made deliberate investments, and we went through, I think, every time we go through a fairly rigorous procurement process in terms of supplier selection, but more often than not, the answer we end up with is a best of breed, and that's where we can double down. And that can get interesting when you think about, and it's public information I've provided there, that we are an SAP ERP invested shop, and I don't think that will change anytime soon. Again, fortunate enough to have our 100 facilities in the 27 countries connected to that SAP instance. But when you deviate away from that, you've got to have a very solid solution plan when you're talking and partnering with your IT team who are invested in the SAP solution. So, it can get a little bit contentious, but we always end up with an answer that is think about how do we solution for challenges, problems that help our customers get their products to market faster, cheaper, and better. And also, of course, how do we continue to drive out waste and eliminate any duplication or inefficiencies from the Jabil business as well. So that's how I would answer that question. Hopefully I gave that enough colour.
Thanks for that, Frank. Vital objectives, and we'll get into a little bit into the decision making and have a bit of a discussion about that in a moment. But I want to bring in Clément. Clément, thank you very much for joining us today. Same kind of questions in order to get an understanding of your organisation as well. So maybe you could kind of briefly introduce Accor and kind of your function's position therein.
Sure. Can you hear me okay? Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, so let me tell, I'm very pleased that we can talk about Accor hotels, because I wonder if people still remember what an hotel is really. When I look at the occupancy rate today, and we know why the situation is like that, but like the occupancy rates are so low. I mean, I wish you all online, you would get back to hotels one day, work or later to go to restaurants and hotels. So that's one thing. So at Accor, I work for the global procurement organization called A-Store. So what is A-Store? Really, it's an organization that offers to our hospitality clients or members to join forces and get premium access to a network of 3,000 and more curated hospitality suppliers. So we offer a full suite of solutions covering 100% of hoteliers' needs. So it goes from food and beverage to guest techno, utilities, energy, operating supplies. I mean, you name it. We have everything that you need to run an hotel or to build it from scratch. So, and the best assets that we have is, of course, because we joined forces with all of our more than 5,000 hotel clients. We can negotiate the best conditions, the best pricing, so that we have hospitality quality-grade products and services at the best price possible. And, we negotiate, that pooling like the combined spend of more than 2.5 billion euros of spend, and we negotiate it in the name of our clients. So that's what we do at Accor Global Procurement. And so we are located in 21 locations across the globe, and we have like more than 270 executives working in our global procurement organization.
Excellent. So that sets the scene very nicely. And and again, to relay the question that I asked Frank there, can you give us a little bit more around your the technology that you use, your vendor supplier ecosystem, and how that supports your function?
Sure. So as for our ecosystem for global procurement organization, we have over 16 technology software providers. So it's, I would say, kind of a rich ecosystem that we have for procurement, but still. And we have like all kind of applications, really. We have all-in-one suite solutions, like Coupa, for example, Coupa software, that we had chosen before I joined Accor. So I would call it a legacy solution. And we have other type of solutions that are contributed to pick and select, and mostly, best of breed vendors. And we are currently working on the source to contract process with a company named Scan Markets. You may have heard of them. We also worked with another company called Perangusta as well. So it's mostly for monitoring savings and collaboration with finance. So best of breed solutions, but we also have a few bespoke solutions, tailor-made solutions that we build with my team, with software, integrators and consultants and freelancers. And we have so-called the digital factory, so that we build those bespoke solutions as well. So my innovation teams has around 30 digital talents that work closely with our procurement business, so that we build, we test and deploy across the globe our digital solutions. And so when it comes to our ecosystem, I would say that we have so many systems that, because this serves like two main blocks that you can see on the top of the screen, which is really accelerate the global procurement operations, meaning that we need to help our internal stakeholders or business departments to kind of reinvent the way they work, to try to automate their core processes, and try to focus on more added value activities. So that's where we went with source to contract solutions, spend data management, rebate management, procure to pay. And on the other side, the other big block, is to provide our customers or hotels with market-leading solutions, so that they can efficiently manage, their procurement requests, their POs, all their needs, and so that we can provide them the best support. So here we're using softwares from e-commerce marketplaces, e-ordering platform, invoice to pay, inventory management, with interface with point of sale system in the hotels as well. So it's a full scope, full ecosystem. And the other, the thing I wanted maybe to highlight in more details is really how we manage our source to contract process, because here, it's a mix of different application, but it starts from sourcing, of course, with Scan Market, where we selecting a best of breed application, where we manage all our e-sourcing events to e-auctions. And we also have specific sourcing templates, sourcing project templates, so that we can manage our CapEx projects, know your customer projects, everything linked to compliance. And we have specific workflows, specific deliverables, specific guidelines to, drive our sourcing events. So that's the sourcing piece. Then we have a contract piece where we also use a Scan Market as well. And here we use it because we have a need of a closed library, because there's a huge set of services that we actually sell to our suppliers to promote them towards our hotel clients. And it is critical that we manage those clauses, those services clauses really right, and that we automate or we manage that, and how that flows into the rebate management piece that I will talk to you about later. And so we use Scan Market to do all that, and we use it also to have a contract that we can then go through e-signature. So it's fully automated down to e-signature, and then it flows nicely into a rebate management system. That's I don't know if that's very specific to our industry, but basically we're in an industry where suppliers have to pay us back some rebates for all the services that we sell to them. And, basically we have to make sure that we collect all the right spend data to know exactly what our hotels are buying with which suppliers. And then we can, reflect that based on our contract so that we calculate all the rebates revenues that we need to collect from our suppliers. It's a very complex process. We did not find on the market a tool that could cater to our needs, meet our requirements. So here we had to build our own tool with the digital factory approach. And we did that through a platform called Faveod. And, lastly, we need to measure the procurement performance, and we use two different tools. One is per Angusta. It's a best-of-breed software players that we use to track our pipeline, of projects, of sourcing projects, and where we get finance to co-validate with us the savings that we generate. And another tool is Microsoft Power BI that we use to visualize the data. And for example, we track and monitor the capture rates to make sure that our biggest clients, order the most items they can and services from us, and not from our competitors. So that's a brief view, I hope, on our ecosystem of applications.
Fantastic, and interesting to see, where the overlaps are with the approach that Jabil has taken and where the divergences are. So thank you very much for sharing, Clément. Guys, we've got some more questions that have come in. We're going to get put in front of our panel here, but I just wanted to take a moment, if we can flick onto the poll. It would be interesting to get a bit of a take from you, the audience, and maybe we can pick this up with our wonderful panel here about what they're seeing. So I'm going to leave it on the screen a little bit for the moment for you to read, but which option best describes your procurement functions approach to technology? Consciously one-stop shop, best of breed, hybrid, or does it just tend to be? And I suppose by tend to be, we're thinking that maybe this isn't something that you are deliberately saying this is how we do it. This just is the nature of what we've decided over time. So one-stop shop, best of breed, and hybrid. Give you a couple more moments. We would love to hear from you there and see what you think, and we'll have a chance to put that in front of our panel in a second. Okay, so if we can just flick over to the results slide. Do we have some of our results there? Okay, let's see what we've got. Guys, maybe you can, I can ask you a couple of pieces as well around this. So I suppose leading would be consciously best of breed with 26.3%, or at least that's what it was a moment ago. Does that surprise you? Maybe Frank, I'll come to you first. I suppose if I look at the order of things, consciously best of breed, highest up there, but then consciously hybrid, quite low down there. Does that, chime with your thinking?
I mean, it's a difficult one. I guess it depends on the type of business you're in and the end markets you're exposed to and your customer set and how demanding or what space they play in. But yeah, I don't think I'm overly surprised here. The thing I think about this is, and then there's a few questions in the Q&A around this, when you make those decisions, sometimes it does go against the grain of maybe what your partners in IP would like to see, and that can cause a little bit of contention. So you've got to have a very well thought out strategy and kind of think about what you're solutioning for. So one of the things that we do, I think a pretty decent job of, is having a ton of preparatory work up front from a business requirements document to find out what we're solutioning for, and then start talking about who the potential providers to that solution could be. And that's what I was saying. It typically ends up maybe just kind of the way the survey popping out here, at least in things like, and I'll just use the example, and I know our friends in ScanMarket are here today, when we solution for e-sourcing, I think much like Clément, we ended up in what we believe is best of breed with ScanMarket, and we've used that extensively, and I think we could point to significant success here in terms of the ROI for the investment in that tool set. But it goes against the grain again of maybe some of the larger folks that are out there that have a part to play in this market as well. So I'm kind of encouraged the way this has came out, but I don't think it gives us any real clarity one way or the other.
Sure, it depends on who you ask, doesn't it? So you would, hence the nature of straw poll. But it's useful to hear how you guys have approached it. Clément, can I ask you to build on that? I mean, again, Frank provided a little bit of insight into how they approach the decision-making process when it comes to vendor selections and some of the different elements, particularly covering procurement. Given what we're seeing from the poll as well, can you help us understand a little bit how you guys approached it at Accor?
Yeah, so that's very interesting because a story I'd like to tell you about is really how we ended up selecting ScanMarket for or source to contract process. Because the whole story started at the beginning, and that was a decision that had been made before I joined. We had chosen to go with a Coupa software for or source to contract, at least for the sourcing piece of it. And, that was at the time a decision that had been made by mostly, I would say, driven by the finance department. And the core, discussion topic initiative at the time was really about procure to pay. And, it was mostly to drive more compliance, more scrutiny on how the people were spending their money at Accor and how we could, drive more compliance on that. So really more a financial approach. And, at some point in the conversation, the sales executives convinced, the group that, by the way, they also have, a sourcing solution, and that could be a nice package that we could buy from them, and we ended up deploying both the procure to pay and the sourcing, the less advanced module of sourcing from Coupa. And when I joined the Accor, I got the request from our CPO or global CPO to really put more pressure on making sure that the buyers, the procurement executives, would be using the e-sourcing tool. And I quickly analyzed it and really discovered that none of the buyers were actually using it, and there was a lot of distrust about the tool, and that it wasn't really meeting the team needs. So I made a decision to build a commando team and to go in the market and find a tool that we would be using at a global level and that we will be delivering on this roadmap to have e-sourcing implemented at Accor Global Procurement. And so I brought together a team with buyers from different categories, different countries, multicultural approach really. And we really engaged into trying to look into, what we really wanted, as a sourcing solution, what was really missing. And, basically we wrote those requirements and we prioritized them. And really it was around 4 main dimensions. One is about core sourcing features. Second is about the core contract features. Third would be user friendliness and having sufficient support for both our buyers and also the suppliers. And then of course costs. It was an essential part of it. And so we kind of gathered the list of a list of 9 players. 9 source contract software providers that we will invite to the tender, to this process. And so we included big names like Coupa, like Evalua, like SAP Ariba, and at the same time, we also wanted to edit some other best of breed players. Scan Market, Market Dojo was another name, and to be honest, Steve, when in my past I've been using like big all-in-one one-stop shop solution like SAP Ariba, for example, and I thought the group would end up like selecting one of those. And I can tell you, I was kind of surprised and happily surprised to see that we went with the best of breed approach. And really, what really made the difference, I guess we have some more time to discuss about that. But what really made the difference was how user-friendly the tool was. And that was key to us. Like, we really wanted like the tool to be user-friendly to someone who has never used e-sourcing tool before, was like, a newbie in digital. But at the same time, we wanted like more advanced users to be able to have all the twists and the bells and whistles, everything they need to manage, their sourcing events to, at the depth of what they wanted to do. So that was a key element, and we really were really impressed by, how well, the tools Scan Market could meet that requirement compared to other software tools that really lost our users. Another key thing that we saw was, the quality of the support as well. Not only like the sales team, but also, support. Like, what we did at some point when we ended up with a short list of 3 players. So it was basically Bravo Solution, SAP Ariba, and Scan Market. We had like deep demo with them. We ended up like using real data, and we ended up like calling the different hotline, trying to try ourselves the support. And we're very amazed to get the greatest support from the Scan Market team, for example, at the time. And total cost, of when we looked at license costs, setup costs, and also consulting services that we know we may use down the line to get this tool to be fully used across the world, Scan Market was really clearly ahead of the other players. So we ended up choosing Scan Market, and I can tell you it's been a big success.
So I want to let's stop for a moment on that idea of success. We've had questions in. I'm going to try and compress a few together. Frank, I want to come back to you first. Can you talk us a little bit through, I guess, the ROI that you've seen and the benefits you've seen from the decisions you've made, particularly from your side and what you were saying, the focus on e-sourcing. Can you give us a little bit of a picture around the benefits that you've seen there?
Yeah, sure. I'll start generally, and then I'll get a little bit more granular. I think. If you're not, and I'm pretty sure everybody in this call is at some stage of their digital journey, and that takes, a huge amount of investment, a huge amount of patience, and a huge amount of investigative skill sets when you're out there ensuring that you are solutioning for challenges that maybe you're not even aware of that are coming as your customers and the supply chain ecosystem continues to evolve. So when I look at the investments that we've made at Jabil, and I'm going to say over the last 10 years or so, that we've been really stepped up our investments in our journey here and been very deliberate around it, and it's shifted away from being an IT strategy to a procurement and supply chain led strategy that IT is a partner rather than the kind of other way around. So we've evolved, I think, and matured over that. And those investments have paid massive dividends for us in many different ways, not only in positioning the company, and I've talked about that earlier around having that cost leadership and I'd say cost intelligence as well, but the intangibles around it, around customer satisfaction, and when customers have decisions to make and they're looking at your company, that they feel they've got a safe pair of hands who's making the types of investments that are really smart, that they don't have to as well. And that's obviously a little bit more specific to the Jabil kind of strategy and vision there. But if I get a little bit more granular, and I think about the journey we've been on in terms of their e-sourcing, e-auction, reverse auction, whatever you want to term it as. And I think about ScanMarket, who we've been a partner with for a number of years now. I would go, and I'll make this statement, and I've used it before with the folks at ScanMarket. This is one of the single largest ROIs that Jabil has had for technology investments. When I think of the financial outcomes, the intelligence that it's brought to us, the ease of use, the different strategies you can deploy, the educating your supply base that this is something that they should embrace and not shy away from, and actively get and coalesce around it. And when I look back at that investment, I look back with a lot of content that we made the right decision there, and as I said, it's paying off in dividends. So yeah, from an ROI standpoint, around our e-auction, e-sourcing investments, it's just been huge for us. And I would say, and I'll give you a little bit more context around this, the $22 billion that we spend on an annual basis at Jabil, about 25 to 30% of that is on the indirect side, and the balance on the direct side. Where we use that tool for the most part is on our indirect side. I think it lends itself to those types of purchases, those types of categories, and those types of environments that we are in the indirect side. So we've definitely capitalized on it, leveraged the relationship there, leveraged the innovation that the guys have done, and very happy that we've picked what we believe is still a best-of-breed solutions provider out there.
And then, so thank you, Frank. And then Clément, again, to kind of bring that question back round, just because it seems to be, something the audience need to know about is how you've thought about what's been the ROI, what's justified the decisions that you've made. And again, given what you've been talking about, that source to contract piece would be quite interesting to focus on as well.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and we can talk about the benefits of source to contract solutions. What I just to say in preliminary is like, the difference between what you'll see with, best of breed solutions and all in one, one-stop shop, whatever you call it, the suite solutions. I think the difference you'll see is about how quickly your users are going to adopt them, and how quickly and how fast you will get the benefits, of those benefits, and that's clearly what we saw with ScanMarket. Like, I could not get the buyers to do like any sourcing events with Coupa, and with ScanMarket in a year, in a bit more than a year, 16 months actually, we got to train 120 users across 17 locations, and that generated like more than 700 sourcing projects, sourcing events, so e-auctions, reverse auctions, you name it, done in the tool. So from 0 to 700. So that's numbers. And what does it drive in terms of benefits? When you think about source to contract, I think first is about automation. So you kind of automate your core sourcing processes. And the idea behind that is that you get your buyers to focus on real added value activities, like category management, like making sure that our offers would meet our client needs, and enhancing the quality as well, and customer facing activities, all of that. Second thing, I see the key benefit is you keep all the data knowledge, all your sourcing knowledge in one place, all of those past sourcing events that you've done in your company. And I can tell you that has a huge value for a CPO, especially if you have some turnover between your employees, and or sometimes like people just switch categories, and they instantly get access to that wealth of information. But then, if we think really about ROI, of course, it's savings. And we know that, when you follow the right steps, the right gates for a sourcing project, you get savings. I mean, and the digital sourcing tool is there to help you make sure that you would follow those steps. And the other thing is, like with reverse auctions, like it's clearly a new way to tap into more levers to get additional savings from your suppliers. And it's kind of incredible. Like whenever you do that, and whenever I add my buyers to do a sourcing event, reverse auctions, we would save like on average like 25% when we did it for the first time. Of course, the second, third time is not the same thing. But the first time you use it, the results are kind of impressive. And I guess the fourth, benefit that I see is really thinking about people themselves, about your teams, how you build empowerment, as a sourcing professional, as procurement professional. You get your team to learn new skills, to get more digital in today's world. And I think that's a key asset, and that's a key thing to consider as well.
Excellent. I want to jump back on a point that you made, Clément, and then I want to pass this one over to Frank as well to hear his perspective. So a question that's come in from Anna, I think relates to the conversation and the point you were making about adoption. So I'll read what she said. Currently, we drive system adoption and we work hard with leaders to see benefits from more frequent usage of the system. From your experience, what are the main blockers within the leadership teams and the end users that make them avoid using the system? Can you maybe help us think about that, Clément? How have you guys approached that? It was something you were touching on a moment ago.
Yeah, that's interesting because, there's so many blockers. People just sometimes don't get along well with technology. They think they can tend to be quite impressed. So if it looks really difficult to use, sometimes they wouldn't even want to give it a try. I think another thing is to try to make it close to their business and close to the categories, the thing that they do like in real life, and that's how you drive adoption. And really, what I believe we did well is really to start with this. I really think that starts from the start. That starts with the team you put together to select the tool that you're going to deploy, and putting together a multicultural, multi-categories, commando team, and engaging them in the demos, engaging them in rating the different providers across the key criteria that you have defined with them. That's really a way to successfully engage them. So I think that's one thing. Second thing is don't underestimate the support they'll need, and to get really to use it. And at Scan Market, which is one thing that I really like, is that we have this really close relationship with their key account, but also consultants and at Scan Market that can provide us with category knowledge and try to help us, help the buyers, when we do the training, help them relate that with their actual work, day-to-day work. And I think that has tremendous value, so that then they give it a try. And, usually once they tried it, once they really like it. I guess the third thing, big thing, is how you can sometimes, you build a champions network, and you try to take some folks that are really more digital native in front, and then you get them to help and convince the others in their teams that the tool is great and that they should be using it. And I think that's one thing we did great. And lastly, maybe is trying to get some sort of competition emulation. Like we had a monthly newsletter where we were showing by country how well people were using the tool, how many events they had created in the tool, and we tried to start that kind of competition spirit that ended up quite well in terms of usage.
Excellent. Thank you, Clément. Guys, I'm going to move a little bit more quickly with so many questions in, and let's see what we can get to. Frank, I want to give you a little bit of a crack at that one as well in terms of driving adoption, but I'd also like to kind of roll it in with another question around if there are any other key lessons you can share in terms of implementation, because obviously adoption is one piece of that. Maybe you can help us share some of the things you learned as you guys were looking to kind of implement some of the tools that you described earlier.
Sure, and I think Clément was very articulate with his answer there, so I'll just build on it a little bit. But and I think this may dovetail into some of the questions I can see coming in as well around change management, and I honestly believe that's what it comes down to. Once the solution of the selection has been made for the solution, it really is worthwhile spending an appropriate amount of time with, if you're fortunate enough to have access to a change management team or a communications or marketing department, to lay out your strategy for that. And I just couldn't stress enough on this call with your audience here around over-communicating your plans, your strategy, and the outcomes. And I would also say, if you can, I would even try and tailor it to the specific audience. If you're talking to different groups or different stakeholders or different users or in different divisions that have solutioning and find their own challenges, tailor your message. Don't make it broad-brushed if you can avoid it. And just explain and be transparent around what you're trying to solution for and the benefits that they will see as well. Don't oversell it. I mean, if you try and oversell it, I think people sniff that in a heartbeat and will end up pushing back, and I think that'll come back and bite you. So be open, be honest, be realistic with the benefits you should expect. Don't be afraid to point out that there may be some trade-offs with this if it involves change. And I would definitely, as I said, I would utilise the change management team to help you craft your story along. Again, if you're fortunate enough to have access to anybody in communications who can help you ensure that you're hitting the points you need to, you're doing it in a crisp, concise manner, you're getting ahead of the curve, and that you get users are feeling that at least they were involved to some level. And I think I've answered one of the questions on here, and I'm sure the audience have the same experience as what I have. Everybody has an opinion, but not everybody gets a vote. And, that can drive some contention sometimes in terms of who you selected, why you selected, because, humans are humans, they have a bit of a bias there. So I would use who you can to craft your story as effectively as you can. And if you think you're over-communicating, communicate again. It's just so important to get ahead of the curve. And I've used this terminology before as well, which I think is really important. You're not you're buying a partnership here. When you invest with a technology solution provider, it has to be a partnership, and you have to trust that partner as well. So make sure you do your homework, make sure you end up with the right partner, and make sure you can continue to trust them, because that's what it comes down to. Can they deliver what they said they would do? And again, in the time frame they said that they would, and whether that's in the upfront deployment phase, or the implementation phase, or the training phase, or once you're into maintenance mode and the users have got a hold of the tool, make sure that partner is still around, and maybe even go as far as that you possibly have a voice within your partner in terms of helping to shape, create, or at least have some type of influence in the roadmap going forward. So that I probably over-expanded there a little bit, but that's the colour from at least my own share here.
That was nicely put, Frank. Thank you for that. So I'm going to throw this one to you, and then I want to hear what Clément's got to say on it. We'll see if we'll have time for at least this one. Question is, how do you deal with the fact that you have to manage multiple suppliers instead of having one overall provider, and the lack of integration between the different systems? I mean, you were talking about, you need to build the trust, and you need to be able to kind of make sure you have that communication with them. How does that play out, and how can how do you think about that need to manage multiple suppliers?
Was that for me?
Sorry, Frank. Sorry. For you first, and then we'll come to Clément with that one. Yeah. You first.
Okay. Yeah. I'll be real quick and give Clément a chance to wrap us up. Yeah, it's not easy, and I wouldn't sugarcoat the audience on saying that if you deviate from the one-stop shop and you start having different systems in your upstream and downstream technology investments, it can be challenging, but it can also work. And I'm the evidence of that working today in Jabil, and I think I may have answered one of the questions here, saying, look, as long as the solution that you're providing is user-friendly, that the users can understand the benefits, and again, it goes back to that you've clearly articulated hopefully the benefits more so than the trade-offs. But as long as you've articulated that, I don't know if folks care too much that they're jumping in and out of a couple of different systems, whether that's in your procure to pay, whether that's in your e-sourcing for us, whether that's in transport management systems, whatever technologies, we spend analytics, whatever it is you're investing in, as long as when they're in that system, it's an enriched experience and they see the benefit and it helps them with the speed at which they're trying to get things done and with the accuracy, and it drives out waste and inefficiencies. I don't know if people care too much as long as it's a well-knitted together strategy. So that would be my answer on that.
It needs to be a well-knitted together strategy, Clément. People, maybe as long as they get that right, perhaps it's not too big of a problem for them. Is that how you see it? How do you relate to that question around dealing with the fact you have to manage multiple suppliers?
Yeah, you know what? I do think that it's kind of a marketing thing that big all-in-one suite solutions have put together to say, you'll manage just one supplier, one provider, and you'll see every modules, everything's going to integrate, and everything would be perfect. I mean, I've been trying it. I've been there. That's not what I experienced. Like sometimes you would be really surprised to see within one single same all-in-one suite solution, sometimes like you get modules that don't speak to others, and I experienced it from first hand. Not to say with Coupa, for example, like we got to buy the Coupa Analytics module that we just couldn't get to work to get the data from the main procure to pay module. So I think that sometimes like you just need to really question when you hear the sales guys telling you that this is perfect and that everything works perfectly, is fully integrated. So I guess that's my first take to that. The second thing is really like, I think, if you look at our business organizations today, I think we've got a lot of complexity. And I think you look at, all the expectations that each stakeholder at your own organization, all the expectations that they have towards procurement, all the different strategies that they have. You look at all the legacy systems that you have in place, and just saying that, the solution would be to have one single solution platform provider that would solve all of your issues and that would make, everyone like it and use it. I think it's a dream. I think it's kind of trying to put a simple answer to a complex problem. So I just think, sometimes we just need to kind of really manage complexity. And we need to really think about what we need, how we need it, what we want to achieve, and choose the best software provider that can do that. And then you think about how you can integrate those different solutions. And the truth is, there's simple ways today to deal with that. We know what some describe as integration complexity. To be honest, it's quite easier than what it looks like. And yeah, I think that's really, the way to move forward. But just to add something, like I have nothing against, all-in-one suite solution. I think you really have to understand where they come from, what they're good at, and what they're not good at, or they're not there yet. And the truth is, sometimes like, so for example, for procurement, I really think that, I mean, the PO part, the requisition, I really think like Coupa is great at it. But like, then, you know, it's just like, when you understand that, then you look at, you know, how they extended their offers, and like, if they acquired some other, you know, other software technologies, software companies. And then you have to really question them about, you know, how many of their customers actually use this and that module. Like, you know, try to understand how it integrates, and try to relate that to your needs and requirements. So I would say don't be lazy about it. I mean, tackle this complexity, and make the selection based on your needs, and not based on the marketing that some try to sell to you.
And of course, you know, there's the potential of APIs and various integrations to knit some of these systems together as well, which we didn't touch on. So that's another key point. Guys, you've heard it here from two very experienced CPOs who've told you how the decisions they've made and the approaches that they've made. Hopefully that's helped you as you're thinking about some of the decisions in front of you as you look at your vendor selection process. Those loads of questions in. Those that we didn't get answered will be sent to our panel. So if there's anything they can pick up, they will have a look at that. Where we're able to share presentations, we will share those as part of the event follow-up. Beyond that, I want to say a big thank you to Frank Mckay from Jabil, Clément Duquerroy from Accor, Alex Johnson from Procurement Leaders, and of course a big thank you to Scan Market for partnering with us to bring you today's webinar. If you do have any feedback, we would love to receive it from you. Please do let us know what you think. But beyond that, I just want to say a big thanks to everybody today. Thank you for joining us, and please do join us again next time.
Thanks, everyone.